What's up, scholars? Welcome back to another video. Today we are doing part 1 of Act 3. I'm going up through 976. This was a doozy. This was more than a doozy because we got so much information. I mean, we finally got to see Roger. We finally got to see Roger in action. We got to see more of Whitebeard. And then we finally get to see Kozuki Oden and everything about him and why people love and adore him so much. And we had one of the biggest foreshadowing plot drops ever. Related to the history, related to the Willoughby, possibly related to Joy Boy, and I am losing my mind over it. I am way too excited. I am way too excited about this section, about this flashback, because when I first started reading this flashback, I wasn't all in it because Oden's personality at first was not one I particularly cared for. It took me a while to get to like him, but by the time he was like on Whitebeard's ship and he had his wife Toki with him, I was sold on his character. But then we get more of Whitebeard, and then we get Blackbeard, and then we get Roger with Shanks and Rayleigh and Buggy and the entire crew and everything, and how and all their travels and how they make it to the very end and find the One Piece. But okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. We got so much with this flashback. Oda is a genius. Foreshadowing so early on and then just connecting everything. Oh my goodness. He's brilliant. Brilliant man. We all know this. We all know this by now. But let's go ahead and talk about it. Because there was a lot of really exciting things that happened, but there was also something really tragic that happened. And if y'all watched my read with me, y'all just saw me be very angry. I was so mad. From like chapters 970 to 974, I was just angry. Just so angry about everything that was happening until those last 2 chapters of this section where I was like, okay, thank goodness. Something has changed. Something is starting to look up. But yes, so much has happened. So let's talk about it. So when Act 3 starts, it's again with Kinemon. Oh my gosh. Kinemon has my heart now too. And most of the other samurai do as well, besides one. One, he can go eat dirt. You'll know who I'm talking about. I'll get to him later. Kinemon and the others, I love so much. So much more. I already loved their characters a lot before, but I love them a lot more now. But yes, this arc starts off with Kinemon and the others at the shore, and nobody's there. Nobody has shown up, and they're just like, where did all of our ships go? Where did all of our men that we had gathered, where did they all go? Because it looks like they've been abandoned, or as we find out, Orochi thought he was being so clever and tried to cut out all their routes for them to get to the shores, so they couldn't even get to Onigashima because he was getting fed information from a traitor. A snotty little traitor. I just finished reading this yesterday. I ended up having to take a break and not filmed this yesterday when I filmed my read with me because I was angry. And because it's the middle of final season, so I'm suffering. But I'm still very mad. I'm still very mad about this whole traitor thing. Like, is it completely surprising that there would be a traitor? Yes and no. Like, no, because it's like I can see how that would happen and why it happened, but also it's just like these people have been so loyal to Oden, and I have hurt feelings about it. Besides that, they're all wondering where everybody is, and we kind of get this flashback of like the days leading up for it. We get everybody preparing, and Luffy is still waiting on Jinbei. Luffy's waiting on Jinbei because he told Jinbei to come, and he trusts that Jinbei will. Orochi has kind of, because of the intel he received, Orochi has planned to ruin the rebellion before it even starts. Kinemon and the others are still determined to go, regardless of if there's anybody with them, because it's like, they were like, no, it's been 20 years, and that 20 years holds a lot more weight now than it did before, because at first it's just like, yeah, like, they've been put 20 years into the future for the fulfillment of this prophecy that Toki had said, because she believed in them, and that she wanted Wano to be free at a certain time in the future. We thought, okay, maybe she looked into the future and just saw, you know, Luffy there or something. But no, it's a lot more than that, because it wasn't just the samurai who wanted to fulfill Oden's wishes 20 years in the future. That's not it. Oden himself wanted it to be open 20 years in the future, because Roger, after finding out the truth about everything, I'm still getting ahead of myself, but they needed Wano's borders to be open in 20 years for so long. And it's Luffy, it's 100% Luffy. I'm right. I'm just gonna say it right now. I'm right. I am right in my theories, and it's gonna happen. I don't know how, but it's gonna happen. I'm right. I just want to put that on the record right now. I was right. And I'll tell you what I was right about when we get there. Because I'm just getting ahead of myself. But the concept of the 20 years holds so much more weight than we originally thought, or what I originally thought it did. I already thought it was a significant thing that was being placed in the story. Like, it already held a lot of weight and importance to it. But after this flashback, that holds so much, because of just the implications of why it had to be 20 years, why Wano needed to be open in 20 years, why all of this had to happen in this way for this moment. And that's why Kinemon is so insistent on going to Onigashima, regardless of if everybody else is there or not, because it has been 20 years, they have to fulfill Oden's wishes. And because this is their only chance, the only shot they have, because they've been outed before, they're on the run, there's not going to be many places for them to hide, like, they have to do it now. It's a do or die situation. But then we get into a backstory with Oden and all of these samurai. We are first introduced to Kinemon, who was a thief, and he was trying to steal from Suru, and she stopped him. And there was this whole mess with the white boar, like the baby boar that those hunters had captured. And I love Suru and Kinemon's dynamic. Like, she was so funny, because she was like, no, you're not gonna steal from me, and he was so scared of her. It was great. It was really funny. They had a great dynamic, and then we get to see Oden's father. His name is Sukiyaki Kozuki. Oden's father is listening to a list of everything that Oden has done, because he's basically a wild child. He is always known for doing something insane and crazy, and he is just not a very well-behaved kid. And even as he's growing older and he's progressing towards adulthood, he is still not well-behaved. But he is known for his insane and absurd strength. Like, the way he was able to curve a river. What does it say? It says he curved the river itself to run through the capital. Like, yes, it resulted in flood damages and wanted him to be arrested, but the fact that he was able to curve a river, that's like a classic, like, myth or fairy tale or legend that you would hear in folklore. And I'm sure, because like there's a lot of ties in Wano to folk tales and to folklore, and I think this is kind of tying that in, as well as Oden being this type of almost like legendary mythical hero in a sense, while also rooting it in some foundational truth for the story. I think it's really cool how Oda is kind of navigating that. I want to do more research into the actual folktales like regarding this side of the story with like Momonosuke and going into what that story with him typically represents, because that's definitely like just the name alone is a big foreshadowing to what could possibly happen for the future of Wano. And I want to do more studying on that on my end, just to see if there's even further connections to classic Japanese folklore, to a figure like Oden, or to a figure perhaps like Joy Boy or Kaido. Like, you know, from villains to heroes, like what it all entails, because there's a lot in One Piece regarding these historical kind of figures and names and places, how Oda is able to take like a name like Don Quixote, which, you know, is a very, very famous book, and he takes Don Quixote, and then he also takes Blackbeard, because there was a very real Blackbeard. And we've seen this several times. There have been several different people throughout the story of One Piece that has connection to like real history or books or folklore, and I want to do like a study on that because it's really interesting. Very off topic, but I do like how this sense of a folkloric hero is being told through Oden's story, like his wild upbringing, but his absurd strength, how he's able to move rivers, and people either fear him or they love him, and then he becomes this great respected figure, and he goes on all these journeys and discovers all these different things through his travels, and comes back a better man, a new man, one to be respected, one to be loved and feared. It's a really cool way for Oda to tell Oden's story. But since Oden is 18 and he's still this wild child, his father kind of banishes him. Not kind of, he does. He just kind of exiles Oden from Wano because of all of the atrocious deeds that he does. Then we get the Mountain God incident where Kinemon stole the boar from the other hunters and is running through town, but the Mountain God does indeed exist, and is this gigantic boar that is trying to rampage through town to get its child. And Oden sees this, tells Kinemon to give the boar to him so that he can take care of it. And Oden, with his two swords, cuts down the boar and saves everyone that the boar was trying to eat. And he is unbothered about being disowned. He doesn't find any issue with it, and he just continues on with his life. His philosophy is always that he needs to open Wano's borders, that Wano's borders should be open, and the thing he says all the time is that his name is Oden and he was born to boil. It's a very on the nose foreshadowing. The boar incident is what originally drew Kinemon and Denjiro to Oden to have them be like his followers and his vassals. Then we get introduced to Yasui from back in the day, and the little weasel himself, Orochi, who was constantly stealing money but is getting away with it because either they didn't care or they felt bad for him. But slowly but surely, as Oden is kind of out in this outlawed place, he starts gathering these people around him, from Izo to Kanjuro to Raizo, Ashura Doji. All of these people start gathering around Oden and start kind of having this kind of formed bond with each other. And that's when Oden decides to be the king of all these outlaws, to set up his own kingdom there, and to kind of formulate everything so that there's some order in this chaotic, lawless place. And Oden kind of picks these people who have gathered around him to be his samurai, to be his vassals, because he doesn't want others to be chosen for him, because he trusts these guys, he loves these guys. And so they have this wonderful bond, and that's when they all go to Yasui, and Yasui's telling them, you know, how to become better vassals for him, like what they need to do so they don't disgrace Oden. And so he starts teaching them things, and they start learning more, getting more refined, and they're full of dignity at this point. And that is also when we get the Minks and the Kappa to join in as well, because the Minks have heard, you know, the stories of how the Minks share a bond with the Kozuki clan. They went out to Wano to find the Kozuki clan. Oden saved them all, and they were bound to Oden from that point. I love what Oden says when he saves them. He says, "You should be ashamed of yourselves. You only fear what is different out of ignorance. It is absolutely pathetic for you to torment little children." That was one of the big turning points for his character for me. Just some of the things he said, because he wasn't a good person at first. Like, he did not start out as a good guy. He had, I think, I don't even know if he had decent intentions. He had okay intentions, and his execution of them just wasn't good, and he was causing a lot of chaos and problems. But being put in charge in this position of power actually helped shape him into a better leader, into a more rounded person who was able to actually start conveying these things in a more positive manner and in a more constructive manner, because he's able to inspire others very easily. He was able to inspire them even when, you know, he was at the point of banishment and disownment from his father and family. He was still able to inspire people then, but by the time he becomes a ruler, he's had enough experience with the people around him that he's wanting to be better, that he's wanting to get better. And I love that after all of this time where they've been training as vassals and they've been wanting to make Oden look good, they all come back to the capital and they all look so put together, so dignified, and so proud. And Oden looks like a proper king, a proper lord of this area, of these people. And when he comes through the streets, people are shocked because they're like, is that really Oden? Like, is that really the guy we used to know? Yeah, because it even says, look at those samurai, were Lord Oden's vassals always so gallant? I love that, because of the change that they all underwent to become better for Lord Oden, so they bettered themselves, and Oden wanted to become better for them, so he bettered himself. It was really great to see. And then who else to show up on Wano Shores? The Whitebeard. And of course, as soon as Oden hears about these pirates on the shore, he goes up, and his first thing is just to attack. He goes up to attack Whitebeard, and Whitebeard is not fazed by Oden, but acknowledges his strength. Oden is just like, oh my gosh, this guy's strong. And they end up talking because he's like, hey, you can take me out of here, right? Like, you can help me leave Wano. And then the vassals come along, and Kinemon's like, hey, you know, there's a strict rule about people leaving this country. Oden is trying to get them to stop. And we get to see Marco. He's such a little baby here. It's so cute. But Whitebeard ends up saying, no, you can't come with us. But Oden doesn't take no for an answer very well, and ends up stowing away on Whitebeard's ship in a very brutal fashion. I think he's like hanging off the side of the boat, and they're like, well, if you can stay here for this amount of time, then yeah, you can come aboard. And I think Izo comes along because he's furious about the entire situation, and he's just like, no, why are you doing this, Lord Oden? Like, Whitebeard, why are you letting this happen to him? Not pleased with the situation at all. Oden overcomes this trial and is ended up cheered on by all of Whitebeard's crew because of his perseverance to do this. From that, even though he overcame it, I think he let go, and he ended up on this island where he meets Toki, this woman who is trying to fend off other either pirates or thieves or something, like not great people. She was trying to fend them off, and here comes Oden. And of course, Toki wants to go to Wano, and he is not thrilled with that idea. He does not want to go back to Wano yet, but she wants to go to Wano because she has business in Wano. But Whitebeard ends up taking Oden and Toki onto the ship. That's right, I got it mixed up. He did let go of the chain because he heard Toki scream. So he willingly let go to Toki. Whitebeard recognized that, took Oden aboard his ship. And everybody just welcomed Oden with open arms. And Dogstorm and Cat Viper came along because they stowed away on the ship too, because they're so loyal to Oden, they just followed him there. Toki wants to go to Wano still, but even Whitebeard's like, oh, let's not go back there yet. And then we get our first glimpse of Roger as he's reading in the paper about this new wild man that the Whitebeard pirates have obtained, and he's like, oh, I'd like to meet this fellow. And we see little Buggy and Shanks, it's so cute. And on Whitebeard's ship, we get to see Toki and Oden's interactions, and how, you know, she did tell them that she came from 800 years in the past. But it's really sweet because as they're talking, it's kind of like flirty, and she's like, well, I already feel like I've reached my destination. And Marco and the others are listening in, and they're like swooning over their conversations. It's actually really funny and really adorable. Oden and Toki eventually get together. They have Momo on while they're traveling with Whitebeard. Izo encourages Oden to go back to Wano now that he has a wife and kid. Oden still doesn't want to because he still hasn't found the answer he's been looking for. And he ends up getting promoted to 2nd Division even though he doesn't really want it. He gets promoted. Whitebeard puts him in charge. And they end up finding this orphan, Teach, on this island. And it doesn't even say what island they found him on. But they found him on an island. And Oden was there to say, hey, get on board. So that means Blackbeard knew Oden too. But while Oden is happy to be traveling back in Wano, his father is deathly ill because of a certain rat named Orochi. And saying, oh, well, I'll take his place until Oden returns because Oden loved me and treated me like a brother. I said it in my read with me, and I'll get to it a little bit later. I have absolutely zero sympathy to Orochi. Zero sympathy for him. Or for what his family went through. Yet, is it messed up that because he has a last name of a certain family member that committed a crime that they're persecuted? Yeah. But is it... but does that justify everything that he's doing? Absolutely not. He's full of it. Absolutely full of it. I have no sympathy for him. There's a million other things that he could have done to change the perception of how that name is received in Wano. And he did it the worst way. Because now that name is forever going to be tarnished. So he actually made it worse. But that's besides the point. But yeah, what's the last thing? Kurozumi is this hated name. Oh yes, because his grandfather was, you know, caught for a crime of poisoning all these family lines so that, you know, he could take over power, but then, well, how dare the Kozuki clan have an heir? How dare they let that happen? So, you know, his plan was working, but this baby ruined it all. How dare they have a child to have an heir, and then he gets in trouble and punished for his crimes. But, oh, he was a great man. You need to avenge him. He was a good person. I'm gonna get mad just thinking about it. Oh, it's so stupid. It's so dumb what Orochi's, like, his whole motivation is so stupid. I'm sorry. It's angering to me because I can't make it make sense. I can't make it make sense. Because someone was rightfully accused of a crime because they were poisoning people, killing people, and then, oh, well, how dare they have an heir to the baby and foil his plan? What? And it's, oh, well, we were shunned, and it's, you know, it's Kozuki Sukiyaki's fault for being born, so we need to punish him and the rest of the Oden, or rest of the Kozuki clan. But why stop there? We have to do the entire nation of Wano, too. Make it make sense. It doesn't. It's not gonna make sense. I get that villains have twisted motivations. A lot of it doesn't make sense. A lot of it is twisted to their own perception. I get that. There are a lot of villains in One Piece that have motives that are a lot stronger than this. I'll say that. Orochi just seems like this really easily manipulated piece of crap that doesn't even, like, he doesn't have a solid foundation for why he's getting revenge, for why he's willing to do this, because it wasn't like his family member was wrongfully convicted. It wasn't like his grandfather was framed or anything like that. No, even the other person from their bloodline was like, no, he was doing all this, but how dare this baby be born to interrupt all of his plans? So it's this child's fault for letting his evil plan come to light. What? No, that's just stupid. That's stupid. He's a good villain, but also he's a bad villain. Like, I have mixed feelings about Orochi's, I guess, his motivations as a villain. I have mixed feelings about that. He's a good villain because it's very easy to dislike him. It's very easy to get angry at him for all that he does because he's a coward, he's a rat, he's a little, he's just bad. But me personally, I think I would have liked a little bit more of a motivation from him, because even, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about his motivations as a villain, but I don't like him. But yes, this other man of the bloodline kind of manipulates Orochi into doing this, or like kind of letting him know, hey, this is what happens, you need to take it out on him, and Orochi falls for it. He's like, oh yes, it is this child's fault for being born. We have to take our vengeance. So they're gonna do that, and this other guy has a devil fruit to change his appearance so he can look like anybody else. So he fakes being Oden's father to put Orochi in charge, and they fool everybody. Back out on the sea, I'm done ranting about Orochi for the time being. Back out on the sea, we get Roger and his crew. They end up meeting Whitebeard's crew, and what does Oden do? He immediately goes to start fighting, and Roger comes out to meet him. I don't know what powers Roger had, but it looks so cool. I'm gonna have to watch this part in the anime because I want to see how they portray Roger's fights. The whole divine departure, like, what is that? And then Oden gets flown back because of Roger's strength. As strong as Oden is, he's not as strong as Whitebeard and Roger, which just shows how strong these two men were. And then Whitebeard and Roger just casually go at it, and they're like cracking space between each other as they're trying to attack. And then 4 days later, they're done fighting, and they're all laughing and talking and just having a grand old time together. Buggy and Shanks are gossiping about Blackbeard, which I think is really funny. And that's when, I guess, Roger discovers that Oden can read the poneglyphs. And he says, again, that this is a secret cipher of the Kozuki clan of Wano, passed down from generation to generation. Roger starts talking about how the final island that the log pose is pointing towards was originally called the Lodestar Island. But that's when they got there, Lodestar wasn't the final island. There was still more to be discovered. But the only way you can get to this other island is through the road poneglyphs, and he needs somebody to be able to read it so that he can go to this final island. And it says, the stories say a vast treasure awaits on the final island, and the government says don't go there. But then Roger says something that we don't hear, and I don't know, I mean, of course, I don't know what he says, but it's a parallel to Luffy. I just know it. I don't know if he's talking about freedom, if he's talking about being like the freest person in the world, if he's talking about being king of the pirates. I don't know, but he says, that's right, and then I'll be, and then it blinks out, and Whitebeard and Oden are looking at him like, huh? It's like in post-war when Luffy, Sabo, and Ace were on the cliffside. And they were all saying their dreams and their goals and aspirations, and then Luffy starts to say his, and then it like cuts out and it doesn't show you what he says, but then Sabo and Ace are looking at him like, huh? Because we can assume he just says, I want to be the freest person in the world, because Luffy's all about freedom. Or he could have easily said, I want to be king of the pirates, because that's been his goal since day one. But by the way they're looking, it just seems like it's something different. And then we get this parallel with Roger, and people have been comparing Luffy to Roger for so long, like the similarities between them. And then we get this on top of it, and I want to know what they're saying. Whitebeard begrudgingly loans Oden to Roger, and Oden gets to go with Roger on these adventures to do the poneglyphs, like find all the poneglyphs and to find this one final island. And I think at this point it's Hiyori? Yeah. At this point, Oden has had both Momo and Hiyori, so it's so cute seeing Rayleigh and Roger playing with the little babies. It's adorable. And we see how they got to the Sky Island, how they got to Skypiea. They found the bell and how Oden engraved Roger's message there for everyone. And then it goes like through all of Roger's adventures. We get back to Water 7, we see Roger and Tom meeting and they're laughing together. And then we get to see that Frankie as a baby, like a little baby, I mean he's not a baby, he's a child, but a little baby, like little baby Frankie, he met Oden? Did he realize he met Oden? Did he know he met Oden? Because if so, Frankie, we gotta talk. Me and you, we need to have a conversation. And then as they're traveling in the manga, it kind of teases Binks Brew being sung as they're going. It's just kind of like the first verse of it. I listened to the entirety of Binks Brew more than I care to admit because it's just such a good song, such a catchy song. But looking at the lyrics of Binks Brew and then knowing what the island ends up being named, there's a connection there. There's gotta be, right? There's gotta be a connection. That's a theory for another time. But they go from island to island. We see them in Fishman Island with the poneglyphs there, and then Charlie being like 3 years old already had this prophecy of somebody coming to destroy Fishman Island in the future, and of course Neptune thinks as soon as Roger shows up, he's like, oh, it's you. So they think Roger's gonna be the one to do it. Roger's like, I don't have any plans to do any of this stuff. But this is also, the part in Fishman Island is really huge because there's a lot of information that gets dropped. One, because Roger can hear the Neptunians, he can hear their voices. The prophecy about somebody coming in the future to destroy Fishman Island, but also the prophecy of Shirahoshi given to Neptune of someone who's going to come that can lead these Neptunians. And then again, it talks about this apology from someone called Joy Boy. And then the more the story goes on, more little snippets of Binks Brew keeps getting like passed into the story, and we just hear these like little snippets of verses of Binks Brew as they're going to all these places. And then Toki gets ill and she's having to be dropped off. Oden, of course, being a good husband, is like, no, I'm gonna stay with you, and she's just like, no, you will not. I love her. She says, if you are the type of man who stops now, then I'm getting a divorce. And he's just like, okay, I won't stay. So even with the situation of Wano growing dire and all of the vassals trying to let him know, Toki persuades them not to tell him anything so he doesn't feel like he has to stay. He leaves back off and Toki stays with them. They end up getting to Zou, and they talk to, I guess, the king of Zou. I didn't realize there was a king at the time. That says Mokomo Dukedom, or Duke. Duke Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan, I think that's so funny. But yes, this dude that listens to Oden and like tells of their connection with the Minks. But both Oden and Roger are unnerved about being on Zou, their presence with Zou, which I think has something to do with Zunisha. I know it has something to do with Zunisha, I just don't know what. Because Roger says it feels like something huge is watching us. It shows a picture of the whale, that big whale tree, but I feel like it's more than just the whale tree. I think it's like Zou itself and like Zunisha himself is or something. And by the time they had finished with Zou, they had found several poneglyphs and then the 4 road poneglyphs. And then it was time to sail to that final island. But before they could leave, Buggy gets sick. And as a good friend, Shanks stays behind to help take care of Buggy. Which means Buggy and Shanks never reached the final island with Roger. They've never seen the One Piece. They don't know any of like the final history and everything. Which answers a lot of questions, because I had been thinking for a while, like, how does Buggy and Shanks, like, knowing all of this, like, how are they operating the way they do? Because Shanks kind of leads on like he knows more than he should, but he doesn't know everything because he hasn't been there, which that has a lot of implications to that. But also Buggy, it explains so much about Buggy and his personality and just his goals and aspirations. That makes sense. That makes sense. But yet they never went to that final island with Roger. And because they reached the final island, they have completed a circumnavigation of the globe, and he was named King of the Pirates. And then Oden, narrating, says this: on that day we learned the truth of the whole world. What the 100-year void is, what the people of the Will of D are, what the ancient weapons are. In the past, Wano was open to the world, and in the face of that vast treasure, which was very real indeed, Roger just... What? Laugh, 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 laugh. He laughed. Like, I have so many questions. But then it wasn't just Roger. After Roger laughed, it says, and so did we all. We laughed until tears sprang to our eyes. And then, I'm getting way too excited. Then Roger has to say, oh, Joy Boy, I wish I'd been born in your time. This is quite a treasure you've left behind. Joy Boy left behind the One Piece, and this was Joy Boy's treasure. Who? I don't know who Joy Boy is. And then they decide, because they're the first ones to find this island in 800 years, does that mean the kingdom's not completely... That ancient kingdom, that lost kingdom that we were talking about in Ohara, this kingdom that the world government tried to destroy because they were, like, ashamed of it or afraid of it or something, and they were trying to cover up and nobody could study about it, nobody could do anything. Does that mean, and it hasn't been seen in 800 years, does that mean this is part of that lost kingdom, ancient kingdom? I want to go to Laugh Tale. And they called it Laugh Tale, which makes sense because people were referring to it as Raft Tale. Laugh Tale. What did Joy Boy leave behind? Because I want to know. I mean, I just, and the fact, the fact that after this, they learned this whole truth, and they're just like, yep, Wano's borders need to be open 20 years from now to make way for somebody. Somebody. I had to calm myself down. I was getting way too excited. Before we get into that, we get them coming back from Laugh Tale, and Shanks going up to Roger, holding him, crying and asking him a question, but we don't get to know what question that is. Was it regarding, like, Roger's condition and how he was going to be dying soon, or was it something else? What question did Shanks ask Roger? Roger is named King of the Pirates, Gold D. Roger, even though they try to call him Gold Roger. They're trying to cover up the name of the Will of D, of course. Gold D. Roger. And the world referred to to everything that Roger gained as the One Piece. And Roger's laughing, saying they have no idea. It spurs a lot of pirates into action. They're wanting to chase down Roger to get his treasure And Roger is kind of getting a little sentimental, saying like, look at all we've accomplished even after knowing I was going to die soon. But then he disbands the Roger pirates before he turns himself in. And then we get this bit with the Neptunians. And it says, the birthing is at hand. Our sovereign will soon be born. And another in a distant sea. The whales are delighted in anticipation of the day the two sovereigns shall meet again. We have been waiting for so long, it is almost here, and surely all will go well this time. Just 10 until the birth, another 15 to grow. Obviously, the first one, 10 and then 15 to grow, that's Shirahoshi. 100% Shirahoshi. And this other one to be born? Wonder who could that have been? Wonder who? I mean, I was talking about whales. Luffy, the only whale that Luffy has connection to is Laboon. There's a whale on Zou. So that could be a connection. But I largely think they're talking about Luffy, but maybe not Luffy specifically, but Luffy as like the reincarnation of Whitebeard. And of course, you know, talking about who the One Piece, like who's gonna find the One Piece. Roger's like, oh, that's gonna be my son. I hate to break it to you, Roger, that didn't happen. Yikes. But Oden is wanting to get back to Wano. Izo is actually staying with Whitebeard. I don't think we saw him with the Whitebeard pirates though, whenever they were in Marineford. Or I might just not have been paying that much. Or he might have been there. Actually, yeah, I think he was. It's been a while. I think he was there. Roger was preparing to leave. He said something to Rayleigh in secret and then walked off the ship. And it said this was a man's farewell and nobody should shed a tear, and yet they're all crying. Because of course they would be. But then the final like nail in the coffin of my theory that they were all talking about Luffy, and the whole theory that I have, this is where I can say it, I was right, I know I'm right. Because as Oden is leaving the ship to go back to Wano, he said until this point there was a purpose in this country being closed. But now we must open its ports before the day that Joy Boy appears. Are you kidding me? Luffy's Joy Boy. I mean, the foreshadowing's been there since Fishman Island, and we've gotten more and more and more as the stories go up. This is like final confirmation. Luffy is Joy Boy. Stop it. And they had to get the ports open for the day that Joy Boy arrives, which was that day 20 years in the future. It was that whole thing, because of the prophecies, because of, you know, the whole Toki being able to go through time and everything, because they all knew something was gonna happen in that time frame. Originally I think it was like 25 years, but like the 20 years that was so heavily emphasized by Oden and the vassals and Toki. It's for Joy Boy, and Luffy is Joy. I don't know how. I don't know how he is, but he is. He is. I just don't know. I don't know how. I don't know how. Is it just like his personality? Is it is it something that he like finds in Wano that like awakens something in him? I don't know, but I'm just gonna put it on the record. I've been saying it since Fishman Island that Luffy and Joy Boy are connected. I was right. I am right. It is. If I end up being wrong on this, I'm gonna be so devastated for saying this so confidently. But I was right. Luffy is Joy Boy. Luffy is like the reincarnation of Joy Boy. I don't know how, but he is. But he is. And that is who they are all waiting for. They are waiting for the day that Joy Boy appears. And that day happens to coincide with when Luffy comes to Wano. Coincidence? I think not. Anyways, back to the story. So Oden gets back to Wano, and it's not in good shape. While people are glad and happy to see Oden because of the work Toki has done to get people on Oden's side and how his vassals have helped out and the samurai, they've done a great job at kind of bolstering Oden's name, and Toki has played a huge role in that. But then they did tell him about his father and that Orochi is the new shogun of Wano. But even though the samurai, they were so sick of Orochi and they were going to rise up to fight it against him, Orochi already had Kaido as his backer, so they couldn't do anything. They couldn't do anything against Kaido because they threatened Momo's life, and they weren't going to do anything that could have put Oden's child in danger. It wasn't just that. Toki ended up getting injured, even though she tried to brush it off like it was nothing. She was injured by this little threat and attack as well. And Toki, of course, is trying to quell Oden's anger because she doesn't want him to lash out in anger at Orochi and Kaido, because she knows more about how strong Kaido is at this point than he does. And she doesn't want him to do anything rash. But Oden, like a proper husband, is like, no, he hurt my wife. Like, you call this a trivial matter. So he goes off to confront Orochi. And had it not been for someone with the devil fruit with like the little biwa, I think it is. Like, it's a biwa that they're playing. If it hadn't been for that, Orochi would have been dead. That would have been so much better. But anyways, he's alive. They humiliate Oden by portraying his father because of the guy who can change appearances, and Orochi kind of not so subtly reveals that his father didn't really die of an illness, that he probably just straight up murdered his father and then had the other guy play the part until he passed away from illness. Oden ends up making a deal with them that nobody knows about for 5 years. And for those 5 years, he is stripped down to just his loincloth, dancing in the streets. No matter, every day, no matter what the weather is, no matter what anything happens, no matter what people think of him, no matter what they say about him, he's there dancing as a fool. And of course, nobody understands why, not even the samurai. They're like, why do you do this? Like, why are you acting this way? People are starting to lose respect for him. People are starting to wonder, like, they thought he was going to come back and free them from Orochi or take his rightful place, and then he does this, and they don't understand it. And then the first year into his 5 years of this, he gets a newspaper to tell about Roger's execution, and of course he's really beat up about that because he had a lot of great respect and love for Roger. And then we get information that on the second year, Moria went up against Kaido. This is where the fight happened with Moria. This is where he fought Kaido and lost. It was during the second year of Oden's dancing, and Moria lost horribly against Kaido. Throughout all of this, his wife, his family, and the samurai, all of his vassals, stayed with him, stayed loyal to him, stayed true to him, and believed in him, had full faith and trust in what he was doing. 5 years later, Orochi still comes to make a move on Curry, and when Oden asks where the ships are, Orochi says, what ships? And that is Oden's last straw. These 5 years of him carrying a burden that nobody knew about, and this was finally the last of what he could take. And crying out of anger, he says, the time has come to strike down Kaido. And they all move out to fight again, to go confront Kaido. And they do. They have a huge fight with Kaido. Oden is taking care of business. He is a very strong warrior, and he is taking care of business. And of course, Kaido, being Kaido, drops this hint of, oh, well, maybe I have a spy in your castle, ha ha ha. Because that's not subtle at all. They lied to Oden this entire time. They said if he had did this for 5 years, they would leave. They would get on their ships and leave, and Wano would be free. But they lied to him because they're like, well, we were at a disadvantage 5 years ago, and we really just wanted you out of our way. Because Kaido says, after your return, if you had joined forces with Hyogoro, we would have had to deal with all the samurai and yakuza of Wano together. We had fewer numbers then. It would have been a difficult battle. And Kaido said that Roger and Whitebeard were both soft pirates. Sir, you don't know them. You don't know them. At least I don't think he does. You don't know them. Morals does not make someone soft. Okay? I said it in my read with me. I'm just gonna say it again now. That's all I'm gonna say about that. They are starting to fight, and Yasui is preparing Toki as a just in case the worst happens. Shinobu ends up joining the battle with them to fight, and Oden and his strength far surpassed Kaido and Orochi's imagination, and he landed a brutal attack on Kaido. But then what do they do? What do they do? Because they are not honorable in any sense of the word, they play dirty. They fight dirty. And they use the man who can change his appearance to pretend that they have Momo captured and that they're about to kill him so that they can distract Oden to catch him off guard so that they can land a hit that's going to take him down. I talked about it more in the read with me, so if you want to know my thoughts, just go watch that video, because I'm already getting angry enough just reliving this part, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But yes, they all get captured, and they all get thrown in prison, ready to be sentenced to death. But their way of being sentenced to death is they're meant to be boiled to death, which is just an insanely cruel way to die. And of course, the whole I was born to... I get it, but still, like, that's just... And as they're about to be thrown into this vat of oil, boiling oil, not even boiling water, boiling oil, which makes it even hotter, Oden's just like, I can't die. Like, I can't die. I have things I have to do, because he has to prepare the way, as he figured out with Roger. But then, of course, they're like, oh, we're not going to let you go. Oden comes up with a deal that all 10 of them go into the pot by themselves, and if they can last for an amount of time that they can agree on, the others go free. Kaido, being very haughty and overconfident, agrees to this, thinks it's funny, and says, fine, 1 hour. And people are gathered all around because they want to watch this, which is just sick on so many levels. They want to watch this. So he has a huge audience of people waiting for him to boil to death. Oden jumps into the oil. Just, this part was so hard to read. This was so uncomfortable and hard to read on so many different levels. He goes into the water, or he goes into the oil, grabs a plank, puts it over his head, and says, y'all all get on this. And he is planning on holding them up for an entire hour as he is standing in this boiling oil. And of course, the samurai are not happy with this. They're like, we're the ones who should be holding you up. You should not be doing this. Oden, of course, is not listening. Oh, he's already determined. He's already decided what's gonna happen. And he's gonna do it this way. And as people are watching this, they're like, oh, well, how foolish can he be? Like, why would he do this? Shinobu snaps, and of course she would. She would snap. Because then she reveals that, oh, Orochi doesn't even want to be a shogun. He just wants this entire country to burn. He just wants to put this country into ruin, which again is one of these worst motivations, because it's like, after that happens, what are you going to do, Orochi? After you have no more use for Kaido in this country, what do you think he's going to do to you? You think he's just going to keep you alive out of the goodness of his heart? No. You're dumb. You're dumb. Like, that's the stupidest plan. Like, Like, what's gonna happen? You drive all these people into ruin, you ruin the entire landscape, so there's no vegetation, there's no nothing. Like, there's nothing left, it's just a wasteland. All the people are gone. What are you gonna do? Be satisfied? Perhaps one of the worst plans ever heard of. But of course, it's not a logical one, because Orochi is not a logical man. Anyways. But because his grandfather was a murderer and the name of Kurozumi is cursed now, he's blaming it on every single person in Wano. That's fair, and that's how justice works. And I'm gonna get angry. I'm already angry. It's fine. Again, Orochi tried to make up this whole story about he was right for doing this. I feel no sympathy for him. Nothing he says can justify what he's trying to do or his actions or anything. It wouldn't even surprise me if half of the story he's telling is a lie because he was fed lies by that one man. Wouldn't surprise me. So yes, I have absolutely zero sympathy for Orochi. But Shinobu, again, she reveals that Orochi had kidnapped several people to be sold, enslaved, or tortured and killed. Not only that, Orochi had a stockpile of weapons for Kaido with the money he kept stealing all those years. And the dance that Oden was doing in the streets all the time was a dance to save people from getting captured, from getting kidnapped and taken and potentially killed. And she says he would save 100 lives with each dance. And they promised him that if he did this for 5 years, they would get on their ships and they would leave. And they went back on their word. Of course they're not going to keep their word. Of course, because they have no honor. They're not honorable people. And they went back on their word. And Shinobu yelling says, for all these years, Lord Oden has been protecting this land. So tell me again, who are you calling a fool of a lord? And that picture of Oden just standing there in the oil holding the... And then people, of course, they switched on, they keep switching on him so fast. They hate him, then they like him. They hate him, and they like him. The people are so wishy-washy. It's besides the point. They start turning against Orochi and turning in favor towards Oden, be like, oh wait, well why didn't you tell us this? Why, like, you can't tell us all of this now, it's too much to process. Like, why are you saying all these things now? Now we feel bad. Now they're just like, oh wait, Oden was protecting us, he was being a good vassal, good lord to us, and we have been treating him horribly. We must stop this execution. And of course, as soon as they start speaking out, Orochi has somebody shoot them down. And then they say, and then it says, they realized that the man undergoing the extended execution they've been watching was in fact the shining hope for Wano. And as the realization spread throughout all the crowd, spread throughout Wano, people realized what was happening, but it was too late. People started cheering for Oden as he's boiling. They're like, please, like, persevere, please get through this, we'll make it up to you, like, thank you for protecting us all this time, thank you for doing this. And Oden thanks them for their support as he's being boiled. And so it is at this moment where he tasks the samurai, his vassals, with opening Wano's borders. Because he says, Wano, no, and the entire world awaits a figure. And when that figure appears after an 800-year span, this country must be prepared to welcome and work with them. And he tells him, he's like, I'm going to die today, so I want you to open Wano in my place. And again, this theme of dreams comes in with the loyalty that these vassals have for their lord, and they said, your dream is our dream, of course we're going to do it. And with that, he survived an hour in boiling oil. Survived, kept them all safe. But of course, again, they're not going to keep their word, so they try to pull another dirty trick and are getting ready to shoot all of the vassals that Oden has been carrying up for an hour. And he tosses the plank off to the side to give them a chance to escape and leaves himself there to perish. It sucks because they all have to run. They all have to leave him behind. in his final moments so that they can escape to carry on his will, to carry on his dreams, and they leave him behind. As he's dying, his last words are, "I am Oden, and I was born to boil before Kaido shits." Toki hears of his death, obviously devastated. She gets this letter, I think it is a letter that he had written her beforehand, and basically saying, if I can't defeat him, nobody will be able to defeat Kaido for a long while, for at least 20 years. And he says, in other words, in another 20 years, the primary figures of this great war will muscle their way into the new world. They are the ones who can strike down Kaido. A long winter will settle over Wano. Until that time. And that's when he's like, I want you to use your power. Give us a fighting chance, pretty much. And so, determined, she decides to get ready to send them 20 years into the future. And we get even more flashbacks with Oden and his children, his wife, the vassals. Then we get to see them all running, see them all trying to get back to Toki and the kids to save them before Kaido gets to them. Kaido does get to Momo and is choking Momo out. But he's like, oh, I didn't realize you were so little. I'm just gonna let you burn in this fire instead. So with Toki severely hurt, she's gathering everybody to her in a last-ditch effort. Kawamatsu takes Hiyori and runs, gets her to safety, and Toki dies after sending them 20 years into the future. And after this whole event happens, some of the people in town are saying, now begins an eternal night that never breaks. And we get Toki's kind of final thoughts regarding Oden and how he was telling her to just go ahead and jump into the future, and of course she wasn't going to do that. And then we hear her say, I fled here from the past, Oden. I always thought if I jumped to this future, someone would pull through for me. And that was him. He pulled through for her. He gave her hope for their future, for the continued future. And then, little Kyoshiro, who was definitely on our side. Oh my gosh. I had a feeling that he might have been a potential ally. I was right. I didn't realize who he was, but I was right. He was one of them. And I almost feel worse for him and Hiyori than I do the others, because the others just got to go through 20 years into the future and, like, you know, scramble around to try to get everything settled. But Kyoshiro and Hiyori lived it. Like, they lived that 20 years close to Orochi without him knowing who either of them were. They stayed together, they stayed close to each other, undercover for that long, near somebody they hated so much. I almost feel worse for them because they actually had to suffer through those 20 years and they didn't just get to jump through time. Which makes so much sense because Denjiro Kyoshiro was the one who cut Hiyori down after, you know, Toko's big laugh outburst against Orochi. And of course that didn't kill her. It's like, oh, he didn't do that well. Yes, he did. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing when he cut her down. I love it. I love how it all ties together. Yes. But then, yes, Orochi is over here bragging about this traitor that has been feeding him information all these years. And it gets back up to the present. We are back up to present time when Kinemon and the others are worried about nobody showing up, but they're still determined to go anyways. And as they're going out on sea, they're starting to wonder how their plan got leaked again. And that's when Kanjuro was like, it was me, because revealing it in that way is such a smart thing to do. I'm just mad about this whole situation. But yes, he reveals himself to be the traitor. He wasn't even, like, cornered, persuaded, nothing. They were just talking about the idea that someone amongst them was a traitor, and he's the one being like, it was me. But the Kanjuro on the boat with all of them was just a painting because he can actually paint really good. It's not these messed up paintings he kept giving him. He's actually really good with his devil fruit powers. And he's actually back on the shore about to kidnap Momo to bring to Orochi and Kaido. Because he is a Kurozumi. So his allegiance is to Orochi. Even though he said, this is the dumbest part, he's like, oh, well, I share joys and sorrows, earning your absolute trust, hating none of you, and meaning you no harm. Really? Really? Meaning you no harm? Do you not see what you did to them? Really? Really? Okay. That's how Jack showed up on, Zoe, because, oh, you could only get there with a beaver crab. And he's like bragging about it. He's like, didn't you suspect how they got there? Ha ha ha. But then, yes, this whole fleet shows up that is going to stop them. And I love Kinemon for this. He has just been betrayed by someone that, one, he thought he could trust, and then two, that someone that has been a companion beside him for many, many, many years. Someone he thought he loved and trusted. This just been betrayed by them. And yet he still showed zero hesitation in attempting to cut him down when he thought their plan was in danger and when Momo was in danger. He had zero hesitation in doing any of that. He was ready to cut Kanjuro down, and I have the utmost respect for him to do that. But then, just as things are looking really, really bleak, Luffy shows up. The Sunny is safe. It was not hurt. It was not sunk. They all arrive. These Straw Hats arrive, but it's not just the Straw Hats. Law comes and Kid comes. All of them teaming up together. Their little alliance of the worst generation. I am so happy they all show up together, and I love Luffy's words because they're like, well, how did this happen? We thought they were sinking the ship. Why are these pirates here? And then Luffy hits him with, when you're at sea, you fight against pirates. Yes! I'm so happy. I'm so excited. And in this one panel, Luffy, I'm gonna put the panel over here. Luffy's kind of looking like Roger in this panel. Is it just me? Is it just me that thinks that? Luffy's looking like Roger a little bit. Kind of like some of like the semblance, like there's some similarities between them, like especially with the long like coat he's wearing. He's looking a little like Roger. But they're all there. They're told about the alliance between Big Mom and Kaido. They're unfazed by it. And Kid, Luffy, and the Law are all trying to fight, and they're all arguing with each other. It's great. I love it. I love the dynamic already. It's going to be fantastic when we get to Onigashima. And then Kyoshiro comes up and aids in their attack. He lets them know, because nobody knew who Kyoshiro was all this time, and he finally lets them know who he is. He gives himself away to Kinemon's great surprise and relief. Kyoshiro is here on our side to fight with us. And they have at least 1,200 soldiers ready to aid them in their fight. It's not just that, because Kinemon's just a genius. Absolute genius. And the way he formed, you know, the little sign on the rebellion's card, it was supposed to look like it was one thing, but it really meant another. And, you know, Kyoshiro goes through this whole thing of saying how brilliant Kinemon's plan is, because he predicted this. He must have thought that there was a traitor, and he did something to throw everybody off guard. Everybody was already in position. They'd already left the port that they were supposed to be at and are in hiding at this other place that was really the indication on the card. And all 4,200 of them are safe. And they're gassing Kinemon up for it, and he's over here sweating bullets. He's like, this entire time, it was supposed to be the wharf, not the port. I totally fell for it too. I was like, oh my gosh, Kinemon's so smart. Look at him go. He is on top of everything. Just to know that it was complete luck, complete and utter luck, that it all worked out in their favor. And even he says, I feel like I've just used a lifetime's worth of luck. And then Kinemon rallies everybody together and says, let us avenge Lord Oden together. They're all trying to fight, and Kanjuro takes Momo and is trying to take off with him. They're trying to decide like who's gonna go after Momo, who's gonna leave and try to take care of him, until Momo screams down at them, I will find a way to escape on my own, destroy Kaido and Orochi, and protect Wano. And Luffy's looking at him like, oh, well, he's acting like a real man. And I love what Luffy says to Momo. He says, find a way to survive. We'll go and rescue you because we're friends. Oh, I love it so much. I love that. So Momo is now going to have to find a way to go against Kanjuro. I have full faith in him. I don't know how, but I feel like he's going to be okay. I want somebody to get Kanjuro for being a traitor. And as they're fighting, they're focusing on trying to go to Onigashima. And these long-range cannons come out. And they're like, oh, well, you thought our cannons before were good, but wait till you see these that were manufactured by Kaido and Orochi. These are real heavy hitters. But then, this huge attack comes from the sea. And who is it? Who is it other than Jinbei showing up at the perfect moment? And as soon as they're like, oh, this is Jinbei, and they're saying how he's joined the Straw Hats, and Law and Kid are like, they got Jinbei on their crew, and then Jinbei comes up out of the water looking great, and he says, sorry for forcing you to wait like that, but I've come back alive just as I promised. And Jinbei's here. This arc, this portion ended a lot better than what it was starting out to be, or what the middle part of this was. Because I was not having a good time. I was not having a fun time. After Oden left Roger's ship and was back on Wano, I was not having a good time until we got back up to the present and Luffy arrived. That portion of chapters, I was not having a good time. I love the lore we got in this. I love the backstory with Oden. It was a really, really good backstory. I really like Oden's character. I like Toki's character. I really, really loved being able to finally see Roger. We finally get to see him in action. Finally get to see a semblance of what he was doing. I loved it. I was eating that up. I was eating that up. I love to see Roger. We got a lot of information about Roger. And, Laugh Tale and Joy and the Bunny Clips and everything about the One Piece. I'm so excited because something big's gonna happen in Wano now, because I mean it's all leading up to something huge happening in Wano, and it's gonna be focused around Luffy because Luffy is Joy Boy. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's happening. It's happening here in Wano. I am so excited for it. But that is my review. I'm so happy to see Jinbei back. I'm so happy that all of the crew and their forces are unharmed and they have their full force going to Onigashima to face Kaido. And I'm really curious to see how where this is gonna go from here, because this could go in a lot of different directions. I'm just excited. I'm excited to see what happens. Next week, I will be having a break off from YouTube because I'm in grad school. It is finals time, and the classes I'm taking this semester, they are fairly difficult classes that I just need to focus my time and energy writing all the papers and doing all the stuff that I need to do for these classes. So I'm taking a break next week so I can get everything done, and then I'll be back the week after that back with more Wano and going further into the story. There'll be another read with me after that because I'll finally have enough time to do it and I'll be free for like 3 weeks, so I'm gonna have fun doing that. But yes, enjoy this video. I hope it's a good buffer between this section and then whatever section I'm gonna be doing 2 weeks from now. So enjoy that. And thank you all so much for watching this review, and I will see you next time, scholars. Bye!